welcome to Faewood. So I'm just going to say we're having the weirdest weather right now. It was raining just 2 seconds ago and now it's sunny and beautiful, and that's been happening on and off all day. So if there's some rain in this intro, then that's why. It's just really odd. I'm looking out the window right now just trying to see if there's any rain on the horizon. It's beautiful and sunny at the moment. Who knows what's going to happen next? Anyway, I really wanted to start a new project and I wanted to make something inspired by the Lord of the Rings Rings of Power series, and I've been watching that. I've watched the first season of that and I'm really loving the Harfoot characters. Now, I'm not going to give spoilers or anything, but if you haven't seen it, or even if you have, I guess, you might know that the Harfoot characters are this tribe of nomadic halflings that are basically ancestors to hobbits, and I really just love their aesthetic. Like, they definitely look like kind of wild men in a way. Like, definitely kind of rough. Look like they possibly haven't bathed for a while, but there is something just sweet about them, and I don't know, there's a song they sing. It's just really nice. And I do know that there is a little bit of contention though over the writing for those characters. Again, no spoilers, but some people have had the impression that they're like a bit cruel or something, and I think some of it might be some choices that were made that maybe, I don't know if were intentional or just maybe didn't quite convey the message they were trying to convey. And then some of it I think is just people misconstruing what they're trying to say. So, for example, and this isn't a spoiler or anything like that, there's this sort of tribe ceremony where they're honouring people that have died and reading out the names of people that have been left behind. Some people, I think, have thought that they actually left these people behind, so I don't think that's the idea. It does, at least that's my impression of it. Although I will say I do agree with, there was one part of that where they read out someone that died who had died from a bee sting or something, and I think it was meant to be this sort of, oh, wasn't he funny, blah blah blah, but there were people that were really cackling in the back about the fact that this Harfoot had died, and I think it sort of gave the impression that they just thought it was hilarious that this halfling died. But anyway, that aside, I again love their aesthetic, and they have these little lanterns that they carry around, and as soon as I saw them I thought, I want one of those little lanterns. I absolutely have to make one. So that's what we're going to do today. I went out into the garden, gathered a whole bunch of sticks. Most of you probably know that I live, next to a forest, so there's no shortage of sticks and things that I can take from. So that's what I did. I've got some old sticks and we are going to put them together and try and make a Harfoot lantern. So it is the next day and I haven't actually done very much at all. All I've done is taken the bark off the branches and then I just left the project at that. I haven't done anything further, and I've been sort of procrastinating today. I've been like tidying the studio, pulling out different craft supplies, I don't know, staring blankly at the sticks. I'm at that sort of starting point where I'm not really sure how I want to construct it. And I'm looking at the lantern pictures and they seem to be this sort of inside out lantern. And what I mean by that is the lanterns I normally make, you make your structure out of whatever you're using. In this case, it's going to be sticks. And then you put the paper on top. Whereas their lanterns have the sticks on the outside. So I'm trying in my head to think about the best way to do that. I mean, it might not be too difficult making the structure and papering on the inside, but it might get a little tricky. So I don't know if that's the best way or if I'm better off making the paper part separately and sort of inserting it. I haven't decided what I'm doing for that at this point in time. I don't know if you can hear that, guys, but it is raining. It's been raining so much here lately, and yeah, hailing and everything. And we're moving into like spring, summer. It does not feel like that at all. I decided to chop the bottom and top off the sticks just to make it look a bit cleaner. Totally optional though, you don't really have to do that. Now I did take a bit of finagling to get this into the right shape, so you know, be prepared for that. I did use a bit of hot glue just really to tack it in place, and that would hold it there while I was trying to move it into the right shape, just trying to create sort of a cylinder shape. And then, you know, using that reed to wrap around it a little bit further. And then to cover up the hot glue and add a bit more rustic look, I added the twine. And also it did add a bit of strength to it as well. And in the Harfoot lanterns, there's a bit of rope that they use to carry the lantern. So I copied the same thing and used a short bit of rope as my handle. Well, it doesn't look exactly like the one from the movie, but I've got to say I love it. I feel like the basket weaving could have been a little bit better done, because I looked back at the pictures and it looked a bit more like a basket weave, but I've never done basket weaving, so you know, I kept it super rustic, I guess. The thing is, doing things like this, you can kind of get away with stuff like that sometimes. But yeah, I think it looks so cute, and I'm going to make a couple more because I've still got some sticks left over. So I'll make one, maybe two more. We'll see how many sticks I have. And then I'll be able to put the paper on them all together. Well, here's my little lanterns, and I'm pretty happy with how they've come out. I was hoping to get a little bit more of a basket weave effect happening on them, but as much as I tried, it just looks kind of scrappy. I've never done basket weaving before, so I've got no idea what I'm doing. I was just trying to do a weave that looked intentional, and I don't know if it's because I'm using sticks or what, but I just couldn't get that to look that way. It just looks, yeah, scrappy, which is fine, I think, because that's how the Harfoot lanterns look anyway. So I'm just going to say that's exactly what I was trying to do. I feel like I can get away with that with these. So next step is to do some papering on this, and I'm going to use my Elmer's glue. I got this because I saw another lantern maker. There was a YouTube video, and if I can find the one, I'll list it, but they used Elmer's glue. I think I got the wrong one though, because mine says school glue, and I don't think theirs did. And there's something slightly unusual about the consistency of this glue as compared to other PVA glues that I've used, but it does the job, so I'm going to use that. And then you just water it down a little bit, just enough that you can paint it on easier, because PVA, when it's like not watered down, can be really thick and you would break the paper when you're painting it down. So just water it down. I'm not sure the exact ratio I use, to be honest. Just enough that it's easy to paint on, but not watery enough that it's just going to be, you know, water. You do want it to be as gluey as you can, while being easy to brush on or what have you. So yeah, I'm going to get my glue set up and rip up some paper. Like I've done in previous lantern videos, because I've done a few lantern videos on my channel, I like ripping up the paper. I didn't start out doing that, but again, that was learning from some other lantern makers. It just gives this nicer edge to paper if you rip the edges. So I'm going to spend a bit of time ripping up some little pieces, and then we're going to try and paper these. And I hope it goes okay, because I've never done a lantern that's inside out before, so I don't know whether I'm going to have difficulties making this look reasonable. And maybe I should just make an insert, a cylinder, and put it in, but I'm going to try it this way and see what happens. Here's my lantern so far. I've been doing a whole bunch of papering. I've left this bit open here so that I've got room to work in there. I thought that would be easier than laying it down on the ground, like on the table, just because I didn't want to have to worry about it sticking to the table or anything sticking to it or anything like that. But, you know, you decide how best to work on it for yourself. So I'm just trying to like layer it up and so forth. Now, it can be a little bit frustrating when you start out because you're using these little bits of paper and you've got to find somewhere to anchor the paper to. And I'm using tissue paper. You can use like a baking paper. I've done that before, but when I watched a few YouTube videos from lantern makers who were, you know, just established, I guess, in their field, they had some tips, and, you know, one of them was just like using tissue paper that was ripped. So that's what I'm basically doing, but it is a little bit easier to use baking paper because it's just a bit more sturdy. So if you find tissue paper a bit too annoying, or maybe you just use baking paper because you've got it on hand, it's a bit easier to get, that is definitely fine. I've done plenty of lanterns with baking paper. And if you're finding that it's getting a little bit too delicate and falling apart, because it definitely can, and when I started out, I had a few pieces kind of, I don't know, smush, and they're still here actually, smush, and I had to pull them off. And that can be a couple of reasons. It can be that you've just put too much water in with your PVA glue. You might even need to just go straight PVA depending on how thick your PVA is. So sometimes I will do that. And yeah, sometimes it can just be how you're painting onto the piece of paper itself. Like sometimes it might pay to just paint where you only just have to stick it on. So I've been occasionally just painting a couple of branches, and for the first few pieces sticking it onto those two branches and kind of leaving it instead of trying to cover the whole thing with PVA, because it can get a bit fragile because you've only got one piece at that point. It's just trial and error. I mean, this technique can be a little bit challenging when you're first getting started. And what I find is, because I'm working inside out, you know, you're layering it up and you want to get a nice thickness so it's strong. But at least for me, and this might depend how you put your glue on, but you might find that you've got little loose bits on the outside, because I'm working from this side and putting pieces on the inside. So then I let it dry a little bit and then paint PVA on there. And if you're finding that like your paper's moving a lot and it's getting really frustrating, I just let it dry for a little bit. So, you know, if you're putting a piece of paper on in a certain section and you find it keeps shifting or it's like getting too fragile, just let the whole thing dry for a little bit. You can put a bit of Glad wrap over your glue if you've got it on a tray like I do. Well, I won't pick it up. You can put a Glad wrap over it so it doesn't dry, and then come back and work on it further. So yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd sort of stop in and show you how it's going. I'm going to do as much as I can while that opening is there, and then close that opening by working this way in. But that's going to get a little bit challenging, which is why I'm waiting to the last minute, like do as much as I can. And then I want to put something at the bottom just to stop anything falling through, because I do want to put fairy lights in there, and I don't want them to, like, I don't know how else I'm going to connect them, so I think I might put a bottom on it. I did try and put some pieces of reed so that I had something to stick things to, but we shall see if that works out. Worst case, I guess I can like tape the lights around the paper, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I guess I better keep going because I've got still a fair bit of papering to go. I've done the bottoms now and I've made them pretty thick. I think they're pretty good now. You know, it just feels firm enough that it doesn't feel like you could easily press your finger through. So I try and layer it up a fair bit. Maybe, how many layers would I say? I think there's probably about 8 to 10 layers of paper and glue, something like that. You can make it thicker, you can make it thinner. It just depends, you know, how strong you want it to be. I just wanted to sort of be able to press it and feel like I couldn't easily press my finger through it. And that's going to be strong enough for me, I think. So it's looking a little bit too perfect. And so my next step is to just kind of weather it, I guess. So I was going to use some shellac, but I realized I need to mix some up, and it like takes overnight for that to kind of be ready to use, basically. And so I think I'm going to use acrylic paint that I'll water down and just do some like washes of kind of like a yellowy brown color, just to give it that like aged paper, or it could even end up looking like skin. I don't know what they would have used, you know, whether it would have been animal hide or paper or what they would have used. Anyway, I think if I just give it that light wash, and I'll just build it up until I'm happy with it. Plus, I want to go over these reeds because, again, they look a bit too neat and perfect, and I prefer them to look a bit aged. I actually would prefer those to look a bit grey, but I don't know whether I can do that and not get it everywhere else, because I don't want the whole thing to look grey. I probably should have thought about that before putting the paper on, but there you go. Because like grey is kind of what wood does when it gets old. It looks like, you know, silvered or whatever. So I thought grey could look good, but we're here already, so I'm just going to have to go with it. Well guys, I hope you've enjoyed this project. I really love how these have come out, and I could definitely see myself making more lanterns like this. I just love anything that's super rustic like this, so as soon as I saw these lanterns, I just knew I had to make some. I hope it's inspired you to try this yourself. Hit subscribe if you want to see more projects like this one, and for the rest of you, I'll see you next time in Faewood. Bye guys.